If you've ever tried to pick up a new language and struggled, or traveled to a foreign country where even the simplest words still don't make sense, imagine being able to master huge numbers of languages with ease. Such people do exist. They're called hyperpolyglots, a rare breed that can speak 6, sometimes 10 or even 20 languages. The question that riddles scientists today is, are these superlinguists a product of hours of study? Or could it be they are engineered differently in the brain?
Sabes, me parece que te conozco. Victor, Axel, un gusto, otra vez.
At a downtown Toronto bar, the buzz of languages is a veritable soundtrack to the United Nations.
Increíble.
And here at this language meetup, Axel van Hout navigates effortlessly through nearly all of them.
Meine Familie aus Griechenland.
He is a hyperpolyglot, capable of conversing in a staggering 22 languages. By his count, that is the highest number of anyone in the country, if not the continent. It is an average day when Axel dabbles in a dozen or so languages at the office, where he works as a manager of interpreters.
Pois, en cuanto a isso...
And it doesn't end there. Once at home, his nightly studying begins.
For something like 6 to 8 hours, I would say no more than 10, depending on the night of the week.
His goal is to study up to 16 languages a night, and he says he can feel his brain powering up when faced with something more challenging.
That's why I make sure that I eat a lot, especially protein, before getting started.
Protein before you start your reading?
100%. Without protein, I can't focus. I have zero.
This is just like a workout.
Very much like that, yeah, it's true.
No one has ever scanned Axel's brain to see why it is he can retain so many languages, process the syntax, and memorize such tremendous volumes of vocabulary. In fact, no large study of these extremely successful language learners has ever been conducted. The only person to come close is an author from Maine, Michael Erard.
I very strongly suspected that there was going to be something interesting going on with their brains.
According to Erard, hyperpolyglots have been running a natural experiment into how many languages it's possible to learn.
I say that, the hyperpolyglots are not born, and they're not made, but they're born to be made.
For his book, he conducted an online survey of people who claim to know 6 or more languages. 400 people responded. Paint me a picture of what the average hyperpolyglot would look like.
They said overwhelmingly that they had an easier time. They also said that they liked language. They often grew up with one mother tongue. They're mostly men, I guess I should say that.
Mostly men. Exactly the trend we found after canvassing the country for the most proficient language learners.
Bueno, siempre tenemos ciertas Keith.
Axel and Steve.
Nice to meet you.
Does it ever come in handy to have a few extra languages at your disposal?
I remember ordering in Chinese and getting 10% off my bill. Konnichiwa. Watashi wa Alexandre Coutu to moshimasu.
I speak Cantonese as well as Mandarin, and so I decided to volunteer for a federal candidate. Привет, меня зовут Steve Kaufman. So I show up there, but I speak English when I arrive. In the background, he says, he's a spy. He's a spy. And I said, I'm not a spy. In Cantonese. That guy kind of turned beet red and kind of disappeared in the background.
Do you think you have a gift?
Is talent a factor? It's probably a factor, but I think it's a less important factor than attitude and the amount of time you have available to spend on it.
Bonjour, mon nom est James Cheng, and I just happen to really want to do it and really put my mind to it. So is the gift that, I had the drive and I really wanted to do it, then perhaps.
We're all being very modest here, but I think talent is the right word, even though we're avoiding the term.
How do you organize languages in your mind when you speak so many?
Hola, mi nombre es Keith Swain. The way that I explain this is I say, at first, your brain has 2 filing cabinets, English and foreign.
The concept of native and acquired languages being located in different areas of the brain is a premise scientists have tested. In this video, a French neurosurgeon has a patient read a list of words. When the part of the brain tied to language is stimulated, her speech is interrupted. What's notable is that in this case, the woman explains she can say the word in German, but can't in French. Meaning different languages can be located in different spots.
Are they any different than you or I? In the brain?
And my answer is yes.
Lorraine Obler is a neurolinguist at the City University of New York.
I'm pretty sure they were born differently, and then they were also in conditions that enabled them to learn language well.
One of Obler's graduate students is working on a test that could be used to identify hyperpolyglots.
Yo, be my fake.
Made-up words tied to made-up objects are shown as part of a story.
Mac.
At the end, a test subject is asked to recall them.
Foo? Is that foo or is that the other one, foo?
And as I discovered firsthand, it's harder than it sounds.
I don't remember.
Very few people get more than one the first time round.
If a hyperpolyglot was introduced to a new item with a new word for it, they could just retain it?
Our guess is that they would get a whole lot more of those items.
Obler believes an explanation as to why hyperpolyglots might be born with such extraordinary abilities is what's called the Geschwind-Galiberta hypothesis. In the 80s, two behavioral neurologists, Norman Geschwind and Albert Galiberta, theorized that a cluster of traits, including left-handedness, musical ability, mathematical ability, and autoimmune disorders, are grouped in certain individuals or families. And often superior abilities in one area are met with deficits in another. It's a hypothesis that not all neurolinguists buy into. But when we tested it, the results were curious.
Raise your hand if you have musical ability, mathematically inclined, you're left-handed, autoimmune disorder.
We're all male.
That's common too. Hyperpolyglots are by far male.
But there were two more men we still had to meet on our journey into linguistic wonderland. Two men who raised the question, just how far can the mind go? Amid the bustle of Manhattan, Tim Donor blends in like any other teenager. His time spent skateboarding, watching movies, and keeping his iPod playlist up to date. It's just the movies Tim's watching happen to be in Farsi. His comics are in Bengali.
Superman in Bengali.
And his iPod features hits from Iran. It is the life of the teenage hyperpolyglot, perhaps one of the youngest in the world.
How old are you?
16.
And how many languages do you speak?
I'd say the grand total of languages that I've studied or that I'm familiar with is a little bit more than 20.
20 languages?
Mm-hmm.
Tim only started 3 years ago when he picked up Hebrew around the time of his bar mitzvah. Now he tries to speak 8 to 10 languages a day.
I heard a cab driver speaking in Hausa, so I threw around a few phrases.
In Hausa?
Mm-hmm.
And his reaction was?
He stopped the car like...
And his list of languages is rather obscure.
You can communicate in Ojibwe?
It's incredibly hard, but yeah. Anin or bonjour is hi.
And you're learning Hausa. And
Hausa.
For people, so the click is on the side?
There are 3. So it's and then there's a third, which I can't do.
So this is a language, a tribal language in Africa?
Correct.
Sorry, and where in New York are you going to use this language?
Nowhere. It's interesting for me, actually. Hausa is related to Swahili, so the grammar isn't so different for me. Besides that, I think the having to click is
cool.
Very
it's
cool.
Cool.
to put it mildly. It is very cool.
There is a formula for his learning. First, deconstructing a language into its grammar and syntax, and then punching in the vocabulary like cracking a code.
But one thing that's also very important for me is translating everything I can mentally.
What do you mean?
I've been translating while you've been talking to me.
Into what languages?
Well, I've been doing Farsi and then also German. I'm trying to think through what you're saying in German.
So you're having 3 simultaneous conversations in English, Farsi, and German right now?
I can do more.
The irony of being able to be so social by speaking so many languages is that being a hyperpolyglot can also be a solitary experience, with so few other people being capable of the same thing. It is online that hyperpolyglots have found a way of congregating. And how Tim learned of Richard Simcott of Macedonia. Richard has studied more than 30 languages, can converse in about 20 of them, and is renowned for his gift with accents.
Okay, like, so if I talk with more of a Scouse accent, it'd be like that. Like the South African accent like that, you know? It's a great accent, I really like it. You know, you have to listen to it carefully and follow the rhythm of the language.
The rhythm of the language?
Yeah, the rhythm. Each language has got a rhythm, it's like a song. People from Finland, in English, they speak like this.
The rhythm?
Yeah, it's very chopped in Finnish. You know, Swedish people would speak more like this. It's very, you know, up and down.
Care to try on a Canadian accent for size?
It's going to be on Canadian TV. It's difficult because I've not had much contact with Canadians. Some sound similar, some sound really different. So it depends on the Canadian.
Richard says walking down the street is like tuning in a radio, his ear being pulled toward all the sounds.
Like voices in your head, kind of like a schizophrenic, I guess. You know, they're going on in your head all the time, and it just doesn't stop.
Much like Tim, Richard has never met anyone who speaks more languages than he does. So we decided to take that natural experiment to another level and bring the two together in New York.
How are you? How's your trip?
Very well, yeah.
السواحلية في الحقيقة هي اللهجة العربية.
The product? 10 languages in only a couple of hours.
Talk to me about what it feels like to speak in a different language.
God, it's amazing. I love it. I mean, I've never taken drugs, but I guess it's that feeling. It's a drug. It's like when people say that high, or people describe going to the gym and they really put these really big muscly. If I were going to the gym and sort of a language learner, I'd be like this, you know?
You'd be huge.
Yeah, I'd be enormous.
Neither Richard nor Tim will admit they have a gift. They both chalk up their abilities to determination and hours spent studying. It's a philosophy shared by Toronto neurolinguist Jed Meltzer.
So what do you consider yourself today?
Recovering hyperpolyglot.
It wasn't so long ago Meltzer had racked up 9 languages with a simple tool, cue cards.
You brought these everywhere.
Oh, sure. I mean, they're easy, they're convenient, they fit in your pocket.
Meltzer's theory is that, like playing chess or learning an instrument, acquiring languages is about breaking down patterns and applying brute force memorization.
But then how do you explain the Mozarts and the Bobby Fishers of this world? Is there no Bobby Fischer of the language learning world?
I would not say there's no Bobby Fischer.
Jed, people are going to be watching at home and wondering, can I be a hyperpolyglot?
If you want to be. If you really want to be. The question is, can you see yourself pulling out your flashcards during your lunch break?
Whether Tim and Richard are engineered differently in the brain or not, they do agree. They're addicted.
I would say so.
I would say I was, yeah.
How many languages do you think you could learn?
I'm not going to stop. So I don't want to think of a limit, but I'm not going to stop.
And that is our broadcast for tonight. I'm Carolyn Jarvis. From all of us here at 16 by 9, thanks for watching and have a great weekend.